Genjin City has the highest number of reported crimes, and the city is often called the Korean Gotham City. Shin Hae-soo is assigned to a police station there.
The story begins with a boy walking alone at night, dressed in his school uniform, as rain cascades from the dark sky. He heads toward his building, holding an umbrella to shield himself from the downpour. Once inside, he ascends the stairs, swiftly folding the umbrella as he nears the elevator. He presses the button for the 7th floor. When the elevator doors open, he notices a suspicious man wearing a cap and mask, hiding his face. As the boy approaches his apartment, the man abruptly exits the floor, maintaining his anonymity. He fumbles to unlock the door, his thoughts swirling with questions about the stranger, realizing he's never encountered him on their floor before. Stepping into his apartment, he calls out, announcing his return. But the moment he enters, he freezes in shock. His eyes widen with disbelief as he sees a body hanging in the living room. Staggering backward, he collapses in horror, staring at his father's lifeless form, suspended by a rope from the ceiling. The scene shifts to several years later, where Shin Hae-soo, now a young man, works as a detective in the Special Crimes Unit. He sits in a bar, half hungover, surrounded by the lively noise of people celebrating a colleague's promotion. One of the men, Dong Namcheol, enthusiastically offers to cover the bill for the occasion. Just then, a man sits down across from Shin Hae-soo, greeting him and mentioning his surprise at seeing Hae-soo there. It's Hae-soo's old school friend, Hwang Jang-soo. The reason for Hae-soo's visit to the bar is connected to him. Hae-soo recalls how, during high school, he and Jang-soo trained at the same gym and were inseparable, often nicknamed double fists. However, after graduation, they drifted apart. Recently, Hae-soo heard rumors that his old friend, Jang-soo, had abandoned his career as a fighter and turned to a life of crime as a thug. To verify the claims, Hae-soo decided to visit the bar himself, even attending a class reunion he had never intended to go to. As soon as Jang-soo sits down, Hae-soo confronts him, declaring he doesn't share meals with criminals. Jang-soo agrees, remarking that it's not exactly appropriate for a cop and a thug to be seen together. However, he admits he came because he was worried about something he had heard. Jang-soo pulls out a card from his pocket and slides it toward Hae-soo, saying he should contact him if he ever needs money. He adds that he never charges interest to friends. Instead of accepting the card, Hae-soo tosses it aside, stating he would rather starve than borrow money from a thug. He then orders Jang-soo to leave. At that moment, another man takes the seat across from Hae-soo, commenting that it's been a while since their last encounter. He casually asks if Hae-soo is still living at Chaeyeon's place. Hae-soo, visibly irritated, responds sharply, saying it's none of his business. Undeterred, the man needles him further, questioning if his financial situation is so dire that he's still living in his girlfriend's cramped house. Hae-soo demands to know how the man is aware of his living conditions. The man hesitates, glancing away nervously, before stammering that it's normal for men their age to have small places. He quickly adds that anyone just starting out in life wouldn't be living in a fancy home. As Hae-soo pours himself another drink, the man mockingly calls him the excessive force expert detective. The man then asks Hae-soo if he needs money, casually mentioning that rumors spread like wildfire through every station. He reveals he knows Hae-soo is thousands behind on settlement payments and frequently gets suspended. Refusing to back down, Hae-soo points a finger at him, firmly rejecting the offer. He declares it's even worse to accept money from someone like him than from a thug. The man smirks and taunts Hae-soo, claiming he hasn't changed since school, still full of pride but lacking in substance. He sneers, asking if 7 years in society haven't taught Hae-soo his place yet. The insults don't stop. The man comments that Hae-soo's life is still a mess, even adding that Chaeyeon deserves someone far better than him. Enraged, Hae-soo crushes the glass in his hand and shouts the man's name, Dong Namcheol. He rises, grabs Namcheol by the collar with bloodied hands, and warns him to tread carefully, reminding him that someone with so many sins shouldn't provoke a detective. Namcheol's confidence wavers as it dawns on him that Hae-soo knows everything. Hae-soo is fully aware that Namcheol only passed his exam by taking the winner's spot through a recommendation. Even worse, Namcheol used his father's connections to secure promotions over more qualified candidates. Yet, Hae-soo holds back, knowing that if he attacks recklessly without solid proof, it'll only backfire on him. With a sharp glare, Jesus releases Namchiel, pats him on the shoulder, and remarks sarcastically that it was a good drink. Though Namchiel sits there fuming, furious that Jesus dared to grab him, Jesus walks out, heading toward his car. As he waits for the substitute driver, his thoughts drift back to the night 12 years ago when his father was murdered and staged to look like a suicide. The memory still burns within him, fueling the anger that led him to join the police force, driven by a single goal: to catch his father's killer. But as the years passed, he now finds himself a detective drowning in debt, far from the justice he had once envisioned. The driver finally arrives and asks if Jesus called for a substitute. Jesus hands him the car keys, agreeing that he did, and comments on how quickly the driver showed up. Noticing a picture of Cheyenne in the car, the driver asks if she is Jesus' wife. Shaking his head, Jesus responds that she's his girlfriend. As Jesus tries to drift off to sleep, the driver begins commenting on Cheyenne's figure, saying she's beautiful with a slim waist and implying it's a waste for someone like her to date a man like him. Jesus opens his eyes slightly, his irritation building, and asks the driver sharply what he just said. The driver nervously chuckles, glancing at him in the rearview mirror, and quickly denies saying anything. Jesus shifts his focus to the window, trying to ignore him, but the driver doesn't stop. He goes further, crudely suggesting that Jesus' girlfriend must be great in bed and looks like someone who can move her waist well. Jesus orders the driver to stop the car immediately. When the car halts, Jesus steps out and demands the driver do the same. The driver exits with a sly grin, pulling something out of his jacket, and sarcastically complains about being made to stand in the rain. Jesus, however, warns him to apologize before the situation escalates further. Ignoring the warning, the driver suddenly lunges at Jesus, brandishing a knife and shouting that everyone has to face death someday. Momentarily stunned by the sudden assault, Jesus swiftly regains his composure and dodges the attack. Though he doesn't know who this man is, Jesus decides the priority is subduing him. With a powerful punch, Jesus knocks the driver to the ground. Approaching him, Jesus urges the man to get up and continue the fight, but as he steps closer, he notices the driver is completely motionless. Unease washes over him. Jesus steps back, unsure whether the man is unconscious or dead. His hands tremble as he pulls out his phone, preparing to call 119. Just as he's about to dial, his phone rings. The caller ID displays an unknown number. Answering cautiously, Jesus asks who it is. The voice on the other end introduces himself as the PayPal driver Jesus had booked earlier. The man apologizes for being late but explains that he waited for a while and never saw Jesus show up. Hearing this, Jesus freezes, a cold realization dawning on him. As the PayPal driver continues asking about his location, Jesus' eyes shift to the man lying on the ground. His mind races as he wonders who this attacker truly is and what motive he had for impersonating a driver. As Jesus considers that no legitimate chauffeur would carry a knife, he concludes the man must be a criminal, likely targeting intoxicated passengers to rob them. He reflects bitterly on his misfortune, realizing he had unknowingly stepped into a trap. Looking around, he scans the area for witnesses or security cameras. The streets are empty, and the heavy rain ensures that bloodstains will be quickly washed away. He hesitates, caught between his duty as a police officer and the grim reality of the situation. Thoughts of fleeing briefly cross his mind, but he's reminded of his unresolved quest for justice for his father's murder. Just then, the headlights of a passing truck catch his eye. For a moment, he wonders if anyone might have noticed him, but the lack of streetlights in the area assures him it's unlikely. Turning his gaze back to the unconscious man, dark thoughts creep into his mind, burying the body or throwing it into the sea. However, he quickly dismisses the idea, realizing he has no means to bury the man. A wave of regret crashes over him as he comes to terms with his actions, lamenting that, even if the man was a criminal, his own reckless punch may have killed him. Jesus places his hand on his forehead, overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation. He contemplates turning himself in, calculating that he might spend only a few years in prison. But he also considers how hiding the body could jeopardize his moral standing and his ability to track down his father's killer. After a long moment of deliberation, he decides to call 119. Reporting an injured man, he provides the exact location and waits in silence for emergency responders. Sitting on the curb, drenched from the rain, Haesu takes out his phone again and calls Chaeyoung. His voice heavy, he tells her they need to break up. To his surprise, Chaeyoung doesn't react with shock or sadness. Instead, she calmly asks if Appa told him. Confused, Haesu questions who she's talking about. Chaeyoung laughs softly, revealing that Haesu already met him. Stunned, Haesu asks if she means Dong Namcheol. Chaeyoung, amused, shakes her head and asks if Haesu really doesn't know who she's referring to. Annoyed, Haesu admits he never wanted their relationship to end this way and presses her for answers. Chaeyoung sighs and explains that, despite her dislike for the police, she chose to date another cop after him. Twirling her hair nonchalantly, she praises the new man, claiming he's nothing like Haesu. She adds that he isn't consumed by work and earns far more money, making her decision easy. Haesu listens in silence, her words stinging, as he begins to grasp how much his life has unraveled. Haesu, devastated, repeats that they should end things and abruptly disconnects the call. As Haesu lights a cigarette, he hears a faint noise and notices the injured attacker stirring slightly. Shocked by the movement, he quickly moves closer and helps the man sit up, realizing that he appears to have suffered a concussion. Gently placing a scarf over the man's head, Haesu softly mutters his wish for the man not to lose his life like this. Moments later, the sound of an ambulance approaching fills the air, and paramedics arrive at the scene. They instruct Haesu to step aside so they can tend to the injured man. Carefully lifting him onto a stretcher, the ambulance team rushes him to the hospital without delay. Upon arriving at the hospital, Haesu feels slightly relieved when informed that the victim's life is not in danger, though he has sustained minor brain damage. Despite the update, Haesu remains troubled, unable to calm his inner turmoil. His friend, noticing his unease, kindly suggests that Haesu should leave the hospital and rest. However, Haesu soon understands that one small error can lead to severe repercussions. He receives a 3-year prison sentence for assault resulting in death. This decision also results in his dismissal from the police force as he is sent to jail. Once inside, a prisoner walks up to the iron bars and asks if he's Detective Shin Haesu. As the officer escorts him further in, another prisoner greets him, reminding Haesu that he once knocked out 8 of his teeth. A third prisoner joins in, saying Haesu had broken his arm when he was overweight, which left it numb for days, though it has since healed. Another remarks that Haesu broke his nose, robbing him of his sense of smell, which still hasn't fully returned. The officer then instructs Haesu to enter the cell. As Haesu steps in, several prisoners chuckle at the sight of him, immediately recognizing him. Haesu begins adapting to life as an inmate. One day, while carrying bags, a group of prisoners blocks his way, joking that they never expected a detective to end up in jail. One man with broken teeth smirks, asking if Haesu remembers him. The group advances slowly, and just as Haesu realizes they're armed with bats and sticks, he tosses the bags aside and glares at them. The prisoners hesitate briefly, intimidated by his fierce gaze. One stutters, asking if Haesu still believes he's unbeatable, while another warns him that hitting back will only worsen his situation. One prisoner yells to attack, and the group charges at Haesu. As they approach, Haesu takes a blow to the head. Enraged, the prisoner strikes him harder. Despite the beating, Haesu reflects on how his life reached this low point. Unsure if this is where his story ends, another prisoner raises a stick to strike him, but Haesu suddenly grabs it, demonstrating his resolve not to surrender. He rises, focusing on the ground beneath him, determined not to let his life conclude this way. Just then, a prisoner strikes him again, questioning why he's avoiding eye contact. As Haesu steels himself to retaliate, he's stunned to feel rain on his head. Looking up, he sees the same man he'd punched earlier, the one he thought was unconscious or dead. Realizing it's the same day, Haesu is startled as the man mocks him, recalling how Haesu had seemed frightened when confronted with a knife. The man charges toward him, but Haesu, still baffled by how this is possible, refrains from fighting. Instead, he dodges, fully aware that this is the day his life began unraveling.
Haesu grabs a man by his collar as he begs to be released. Instead of using brute force, Haesu chooses to subdue him with a firm slap, making him lose balance and fall. He quickly lifts him up and secures his hand behind his back. He calmly states that he acted in self-defense since the man had initially tried to attack him with a knife. The man, Groaning in pain, asks what he means. Jesus clarifies that using force in self-defense is justified in such situations. Without hesitation, he breaks both of the man's arms, making him scream in agony. He then contacts Neju Station, where he is stationed as a senior officer, to report the incident. Realizing that Jesus is a cop, the man instantly regrets his attack. Jesus cuffs him and starts walking away. The man pleads for the cuffs to be removed, promising that Jesus won't regret it, but Jesus ignores him and keeps walking. As he processes everything that happened, convinced that his time in jail was too vivid to be a dream, his phone rings. He answers, expecting the PayPal driver, who apologizes for being late and asks where he is. Jesus, too overwhelmed, abruptly ends the call. He glances at the man, wondering if fate has given him a second chance. Jesus calls his girlfriend and tells her they should break up. As expected, she asks if Appa spoke to him. Jesus confirms, saying it was good while it lasted, and promises to move out the next day. Just then, a police car arrives, and the detective in charge takes over. Jesus is soon cleared as the act is deemed self-defense. A knife is found among the man's belongings, raising suspicion. The detective searches his house and finds evidence linking him to multiple crimes. Among them, a diary titled Hunting details his plan to rob and harm others, including a specific plan targeting Jesus. The diary reveals his intent to kill Jesus after stopping his car and later target his girlfriend. This discovery confirms the man's criminal activities, but he was caught before he could act. Thanks to Jesus, a dangerous criminal, whose case had gone cold, was finally apprehended. As the news spreads, many support Jesus, mocking the attacker for choosing the wrong target. Some criticize Jesus for using excessive force, but they are quickly drowned out by supporters arguing that anyone would act similarly in self-defense. Some even suggest that the critics might be connected to the criminal. Although Jesus faces a 3-month pay deduction for excessive force, he is honored with an award equivalent to a promotion in recognition of his swift action. When his colleagues hear the news, one of them remarks that Jesus deserved an actual promotion. He believes no officer is as effective at handling criminals as Jesus. Another officer counters, saying that this is precisely why Jesus hasn't been promoted. His tendency to be too rough with criminals makes him unsuitable for higher ranks. At that moment, another officer hands Jesus a cup of coffee, asking if he feels disappointed. Jesus calmly responds that he's just relieved it didn't escalate further. The room falls silent, everyone realizing how few people could take down a serial criminal with such ease. Jesus hides his inner turmoil behind a sip of coffee, deciding to use his second chance wisely. Later, he tucks some money into a bag. On Saturday, he sits in a restaurant, nervously holding a lottery ticket as the winning numbers are announced. The numbers, 43, 28, 11, and so on, don't match his. Frustrated, he memorizes them before tossing his ticket aside, realizing he lost. He prays desperately to be sent back in time for another chance. Just then, the restaurant owner, noticing his intense prayer, asks if someone had passed away. Jesus opens his eyes, disappointed that nothing has changed despite his earnest plea. One day at work, the chief unexpectedly calls for him, leaving him puzzled. Another officer wonders why, as Jesus hasn't done anything wrong lately. As he gets up, the room buzzes with speculation that he might be getting a promotion. Entering the office, Jesus politely asks if the chief called him. The chief nods and casually asks how long, until April. Jesus responds that April is in 2 days. Without hesitation, the chief orders him to head to Genjin to join the Eastern Police Force. Stunned, Jesus listens as the chief explains that the decision is final, coming from higher-ups. He adds that while Jesus has done well, his reputation as an excessive force officer is problematic. Jesus is shocked. Though he never felt ashamed of his actions, the higher-ups are forcing him to transfer. He believes the law is too weak, leaving him no choice but to use force for justice. He also suspects that his chief has taken bribes, though he lacks proof. Suppressing his anger, he bows and accepts the order. Walking out, frustration fills his mind, realizing that this transfer means higher costs and disrupts his search for his father's killer. Arriving at Genjin Police Station, He steps out of the car, taking in the sight of the massive building. He senses that many cases must come through here. As he enters, chaos unfolds before him as two criminals argue loudly while an officer struggles to calm them. The disorderly atmosphere surprises him, making him wonder how the country is deteriorating. A woman helps a criminal vomit into a bag, making him sigh in frustration. He recalls being told to visit in the afternoon instead of the morning, and realizes that this level of chaos must be normal here. Just then, a female officer notices him and asks why he's there. He calmly states that he's joining the Genjin police station starting today. At that moment, the criminal vomits on Jesus' right foot, leaving both of them disgusted. The officer quickly scolds the criminal, promising to get another bag to clean the mess. Genjin City has the highest number of reported crimes and injured police officers on duty. However, this fact is hidden from the public as it would be embarrassing for both the city and the government. Even though the reports are secret, everyone knows about the crimes, and the city is often called the Korean Gotham City. Shin Hae-soo is assigned to a police station there, and on his first day, a woman named Beck Hannah reports a case of public intoxication at Jejong-Fiba intersection. The senior officer tells Lim Sunjeong to take the case, and then asks about the new recruit. After Hae-soo introduces himself, the senior officer orders him to assist Sunjeong. As they get into a patrol car, Sunjeong informs their team leader that Unit 4 will reach the location soon. The officer replies that they will arrive in about 7 minutes, and mentions that the woman's head is bleeding. Hae-soo notices the technology being used, and wonders if it is new, thinking that things must have changed over the years. Sunjeong tightens her seatbelt and tells Hae-soo that she recently started working in the patrol car, since Genjin Police Station is the first to follow this method. She tells him they are about to leave and speeds off, startling Hae-soo. Surprised, he asks if she always drives like this. She apologizes, asking if it scared him. They soon arrive at the scene, where a crowd is gathered, murmuring about the situation. They see two thugs pushing a part-time restaurant worker to the ground and pressing a foot on his head. Sunjeong rushes toward them, ordering them to stop. However, the thugs remain unfazed, even inviting her for drinks. Sunjeong laughs, knowing the criminals in this city act like this, and moves closer, but she stops when they throw the part-timer at her feet. She gets angry and is about to react, but Hae-soo places a hand on her shoulder, telling her to call an ambulance first. She nods and steps away while Hae-soo walks toward the thugs. They mock him, asking if he really wants a fight. One of them breaks a beer bottle, warning him to back off while holding the sharp end, but Hae-soo stays calm. He quickly grabs a thug's arm and twists it, breaking it as the thug screams in pain. Seeing this, the other thug tries to attack, but Hae-soo dodges easily and restrains both of them, using just one hand each. As they struggle, he announces their arrest for multiple charges, including aggravated assault and obstruction of business. He also reminds them of their right to a lawyer. Sunjeong calls 119 and watches in shock as Hae-soo handles the situation alone. When the call is answered, she quickly requests an ambulance, given the location. Soon, the ambulance arrives and the thugs are taken away by the police. Hae-soo and Sunjeong get back into the patrol car. As they fasten their seat belts, Sunjeong informs him that the elderly woman is no longer in danger and the part-timer's injuries are not life-threatening. Hearing this, Hae-soo looks at her relieved. Sunjeong thanks him, noting that the situation ended sooner than expected, and suggests they head back. Just then, they receive another case, a missing person in Yongsu. Sunjeong sighs, commenting that their station never runs out cases, and reports that Unit 4 is nearby. The girl who reported the case explains that she was drinking with a friend. After returning from the bathroom, she found her friend missing. She adds that her friend was extremely drunk and sitting in the same spot before she left. As the girl urges them to hurry, they reach the scene. She is searching for a friend, tears in her eyes. When they approach, she explains that her friend had promised to call once she got home. The police ask if her friend contacted anyone while drinking, but she shakes her head, insisting that her friend was too drunk to leave on her own. Hae-soo decides to check the CCTV footage with the girl and the bar owner. As the owner plays the video, The girl points out her friend being carried away by an unknown man in a black hoodie and blue jeans. Sun Jeong asks if he could be her boyfriend or someone she knows, but the girl denies it, saying she has no boyfriend. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Hae-soo and Sun Jeong report to the station, requesting the case be changed from a missing person to a kidnapping. They add that the suspect is wearing a black hoodie and blue jeans. Sun Jeong sends out an alert, saying the suspect must still be nearby unless he got into a car. She instructs the police to check motels, karaoke rooms, and coin karaoke rooms. Just then, Unit 201 from the Violent Crimes Team reports that they are heading to Songwon, since even rape cases have been marked as Code 0. They ask Unit 4 to assist. At the scene, the Violent Crimes Team introduces themselves and takes charge. They instruct the officers to search karaoke rooms but exclude motels. As Hae-soo and Sun Jeong walk away, Sun Jeong asks why motels aren't being checked. Hae-soo explains that another unit is probably handling that, adding that focusing on the most likely locations first helps use manpower and resources better. She nods, understanding the urgency. Spotting a nearby karaoke place, they decide to check it first. At the entrance, Sun Jeong asks if the place is open, but Hae-soo tells her to skip formalities and head inside. When the customers see the officers, they angrily shout, asking if the police can barge in as they please. Sun Jeong quickly apologizes, but they keep moving, knowing time is crucial. Suddenly, Hae-soo spots a man in a black hoodie and jeans. He calls out to him, but the man turns and runs. Hae-soo immediately chases after him, shouting for Sun Jeong to alert all units. She grabs her radio and reports that they have spotted the suspect at the Should I Sing or Not karaoke, and that he is trying to escape. As Hae-soo closes in, he suddenly stops, his eyes widening at the sight of a body lying nearby, blood pooling on the floor. Shocked but composed, he quickly yells for Sun Jeong to call an ambulance.